Hey everyone, welcome to my new channel. I'm excited to bring you some of the most chilling and suspenseful stories you'll ever hear. This is my very first video, and I'm aiming for 1,000 subscribers to get this journey started. So if you like what you hear, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications on future videos. Now, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. Title: The Watcher. I had always dreamed of living in an old house with character. So when Sarah and I found this charming, creaky house on the outskirts of town, I was thrilled. It was perfect, spacious, with a large backyard and a front porch that seemed to welcome us. But as the days went by, I began to feel a creeping unease. It started subtly. I'd catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, movement that vanished when I turned my head. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but the feeling persisted. Sarah dismissed my concerns, saying I was letting my mind run wild. One evening, Sarah was out with friends and I was alone in the house. I was curled up in the living room with a book when I heard a faint creaking from upstairs. It was so soft I almost ignored it, but then it happened again. Louder this time, like footsteps. My heart began to race. I tried to reason with myself that it was just the house settling, but a chill ran down my spine. Determined to find out what was causing the noise, I climbed the stairs. As I reached the top, I noticed a cold draft, and the air felt thick. The noise was coming from the attic, a place I hadn't yet explored. My hand trembled as I reached for the attic door. It creaked open, revealing a dimly lit space cluttered with old furniture and dusty boxes. As I stepped inside, the light from the hallway cast long shadows. My eyes were drawn to an old, large mirror propped against the far wall. As I approached the mirror, I noticed something in its reflection that made my blood run cold. Behind me, in the mirror, was a faint outline of a figure, just out of sight. I spun around, but there was no one there. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was closer. My heart pounded as I grabbed a nearby flashlight and shone it towards the mirror. The attic light revealed a ghastly figure in the reflection, a gaunt face with hollow eyes and a twisted grin. I could barely breathe, my mind racing. Suddenly, the attic door slammed shut with a deafening bang. I rushed to it, but it was locked. I pounded on the door, shouting for help, but my voice was swallowed by the thick walls. The temperature in the attic dropped, and I could see my breath in the icy air. The mirror began to fog up, and the figure's grin widened. Panicking, I searched the attic for something to break the lock. My fingers found an old dusty box, and inside, I discovered a crowbar. With a surge of adrenaline, I pried open the attic door and stumbled down the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. When I reached the front door, I glanced back one last time. The mirror was now shattered, and the attic was silent. I fled the house, not stopping until I was outside, shivering in the cold night. Sarah came home later, and I told her everything. She was skeptical, but agreed to stay with friends that night. The next morning, I returned to the house with her to investigate further. But when we arrived, the attic door was open, the mirror was gone, and the house seemed perfectly normal. I knew what I had seen, though. Whatever was in that mirror had been watching me, and the thought of it still lurking somewhere in the house left me with an unshakable fear. We decided to move out. I never spoke of the incident again, but the unease remained. Every now and then, I catch myself glancing nervously at mirrors, half expecting to see that ghastly face staring back at me. End of story. Before we continue to our next story, take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. Now, let's get back to the darkness. Title: Whispering House. For as long as I can remember, there's been a house on the edge of our small town of Ravensbrook that everyone avoided. It's an old Victorian mansion, its grandeur long faded, with a history so tangled and eerie that it's become the stuff of local legend. The Whispering House, they call it, because of the strange murmurs and voices people claim to hear when they're near it. I always thought the tales were just that, tales, but my curiosity got the better of me. It started on a crisp autumn evening. I had just moved to Ravensbrook and heard the stories from my new neighbors, who spoke of the house with a mix of fear and fascination. They warned me not to go near it, but I was undeterred. As a journalist, I was always on the lookout for a good story, and the whispering house seemed like it had potential. One foggy morning, I found myself standing at the wrought iron gates of the mansion. The once grand facade was now draped in ivy, and the windows were boarded up, except for one that had a small broken pane. I couldn't resist the urge to peek inside. As I looked through the crack, I saw nothing but darkness. Determined to uncover the truth, I managed to find a loose board on the side of the house and slipped inside. The interior was just as I had imagined, dusty, cobweb-covered, and steeped in a thick layer of neglect. As I moved cautiously through the foyer, I noticed a grand staircase that led to the upper floors. The wooden steps creaked under my weight, and the silence was almost oppressive. I explored room after room, each one more decayed than the last. In the library, I discovered old books and papers scattered across the floor. It was clear that the house had been abandoned for decades, yet there was an unsettling feeling that I was not alone. The whispers began subtly at first, almost as if they were just the sounds of the house settling. But as I continued, they grew louder, more distinct. In one of the upstairs bedrooms, I found a large mirror with a gilded frame. The glass was cracked, and the frame was tarnished, but something about it caught my eye. As I approached, I noticed a faint figure moving behind me in the reflection. I spun around, but the room was empty. My heart raced. I could still hear the whispers, now clearly coming from the direction of the mirror. Driven by a mix of fear and intrigue, I examined the mirror more closely. On the back of the frame, I discovered a hidden latch. I hesitated, but my curiosity pushed me to open it. Behind the mirror was a small compartment containing a diary and a set of old photographs. The diary belonged to a woman named Eliza Harrington, who had lived in the house in the late 1800s. As I read through the diary, I learned that Eliza was the daughter of the house's original owner. She had been a reclusive figure, rumored to have practiced the occult. Her writings were filled with accounts of strange occurrences and her obsession with communicating with the afterlife. She spoke of a ritual she had performed, hoping to contact a lost love, but it seemed to have unleashed something far more sinister. The final entry was particularly chilling. It described how the whispers in the house had become overwhelming and that she had felt an otherworldly presence growing stronger. The last line read, "I fear I am not alone, and the whispers have become voices. The spirits of the house are restless." Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped, and I felt a cold breath on my neck. The whispers turned into voices, some of them pleading, others angry. I realized that the diary had revealed more than just history. It had awakened something. Panicking, I tried to leave the house, but the front door wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The whispers turned into cries, and I felt an eerie presence moving around me. I raced back to the broken window I had entered through, but as I approached it, a shadowy figure appeared in the reflection. It was Eliza, or at least a ghostly version of her. Her eyes were hollow, and her expression was one of torment. With renewed urgency, I pushed the window open and squeezed through, falling onto the grass outside. I ran to my car and drove away, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I didn't stop until I was safely back in town, my mind racing with the events I had just experienced. I contacted the local historical society to share my findings, and they were shocked by the details. They decided to investigate the house further and discovered that Eliza's tragic story was more than just legend. They also found evidence of paranormal activity, confirming that the whispers were indeed voices from the past. The Whispering House remains abandoned, but its story lives on. It's a reminder that some places hold more than just memories. They hold the echoes of the past, and sometimes they are not easily forgotten. End of story. Before diving into our next tale of terror, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support keeps the chills coming and helps us uncover more dark and twisted stories just for you. Now brace yourself. The horror continues. Title: My neighbor's basement is a gateway to another world. When I moved into my new apartment, I was just looking for a fresh start. A quiet place where I could finally write my book and get away from the noise of the city. The building was old but charming, the kind of place that still had radiators clanking in the winter and creaky wooden floors that spoke of years gone by. But it was cheap, and I thought I could handle the quirks. My neighbor, Mrs. Harris seemed like an ordinary, sweet elderly lady. She always smiled at me in the hallway, offered me cookies on more than one occasion, and spoke in a soft, calming voice that made you feel at home. But there was something about her that made me uneasy. A glint in her eye, or maybe the way she always seemed to be listening, even when no one was speaking. One evening, as I was heading out for a late-night walk to clear my head, I heard something strange coming from her apartment. It wasn't loud, but it was distinct, a low, rhythmic hum, almost like chanting, but not in any language I recognized. Curiosity got the better of me, and I leaned closer to her door. The humming grew louder, and I could swear I heard whispers underneath it, like dozens of voices speaking at once. My heart pounded as I realized the sound wasn't just coming from behind the door, it was coming from below, from the basement. And that's when I saw it. The small, narrow door at the end of the hallway that I had never noticed before, slightly ajar, a soft, eerie light flickering from within. I should have turned around. I should have walked away. But something drew me closer, something I still can't explain. As I pushed the door open and descended the creaking wooden stairs, the air grew colder, heavier. The humming grew louder, and now I could hear those whispers clearly. A chorus of voices, some pleading, some laughing, and some crying. My breath turned to mist in front of me as I stepped into the basement. It was dimly lit by candles, casting long, flickering shadows on the stone walls. But the thing that caught my eye, the thing that stopped me in my tracks, was the large, ornate mirror standing at the far end of the room. Its surface shimmered, not with a reflection, but with movement. I stepped closer, my heart hammering in my chest. The mirror wasn't just a mirror, it was a window. And on the other side, I saw things, dark, twisted shapes moving in a place that looked nothing like this world. And then I heard her voice behind me. "You shouldn't be here," Mrs. Harris whispered, her voice now cold and sharp, nothing like the warm, comforting tone I knew. I turned, and her eyes were glowing with a light that didn't belong to any human. "Some doors," she said, "are meant to stay closed." Before I could react, she moved with impossible speed and pushed me toward the mirror. I felt a force, a pull, dragging me closer to the glass. I fought, I struggled, but it was like being caught in a riptide. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me whole was her smile, a smile that promised secrets I never wanted to know. And now I'm here, in this place beyond the mirror. A place where the shadows whisper and the walls seem to breathe. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't seem to work the same way. But if you're listening to this, if you ever find a door slightly ajar that you swear wasn't there before, don't open it. Trust me, some secrets are better left undiscovered. And remember, subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed these stories, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Remember, I'm aiming for my first 1,000 subscribers, so if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more gripping tales. Your support means the world to me and helps me create even more content for you. Stay tuned for the next story, and until then, keep your imagination alive.